talking about Robert Taylor Projects?
Oh, Robert Taylor Homes, and that's now. Actually, I was talking about Morgan Park, but Robert Taylor Homes, it was about your floor. Because I lived on the ninth floor. I was Robert Taylor Homes, 4352 South State Apartment 909. Everybody on that block was on that porch was my parents. Miss Sarah from down 902, we used to eat with her. I lived in 909. I'll never forget Barbara Smith in 903. She did the sex dance with everybody. I mean, all the people were my family on that porch, on that ninth floor.
Break down about the floor thing. You said it was about the floor you lived on.
Okay, so I grew up in Robert Taylor Homes. The Robert Taylor Homes were 28 apartment buildings that had 16 floors in each building and 10 apartments on each floor. So each apartment, so you go from 101 to 110. You go from 909 to 910. I was in 909, 4352 South State Apartment, 909. And so everybody had a certain block. A lot of had a certain porch, a certain floor you were on. We was on the ninth floor. And for kids, most parents didn't let their kids leave the floor, though, unless they left with an adult or a big brother or a big sister. So everybody...
it could be quite dangerous.
Yeah, it'd be dangerous, man, in the projects. It was, although... When we moved into projects, they weren't projects yet. We moved into projects in '62, so they really just opened. So they were still high-rise apartments. We was like the Jeffersons. Where you moving on up? When we moved into the projects, we were moving up from a lower ghetto to a higher ghetto, but it hadn't become a ghetto yet. It was still a high-rise apartment building. People hadn't drawn graffiti all on the walls. The elevators worked. People wasn't peeing in the hallway. None of that was going on when we got there. By the time we left, all of that was going on. You'd be happy if both elevators worked. Even if the elevators worked, sometimes the light was out in the elevator. It was like, wow. It got bad because what are you going to do when you got that many people on top of each other? You know, you're talking about 160 families per building, and there's 28 of those side by side. Things get a little hairy. They get a little tricky, you know. And the folks who built that knew what they was doing.
Exactly. That's
they
the
did
whole
that.
thing.
They did that on purpose.
Time.
Oh yeah. In fact, they did a test in New York called the rat test, where they actually took crates and stacked rats in these crates, and they left them alone. They gave them food, but even though they had food, within time they attacked each other and killed each other, and with time they wiped each other out, because you can't have a bunch of entities on top of each other like that without whatever's going on internally wanting to do something about it, wanting to make a move, you know. So they knew that before they moved us in. And if you notice the projects, most projects are near freeways, because it was designed that if we got all the black people corralled in a certain area, if some shit went down, we could roll tanks right down the freeway and get there quickly. Yeah, so all that was by design. Systemic racism is not an accident. And it's been going on for 300-400 years, where systematically, and people, the word systemic is such a not used word. We don't use it that often, and a lot of people don't really know what it is. It sounds tricky and complicated. People don't bother, but it's really just another way of saying systematically creating racism is the systemic racism. So systematically, white folks have taught throughout the years that black people ain't that they're the worst, that there's something wrong with them, that they're less than us, you know. And I think somebody wrote that if you could teach the poorest white trash person to feel like he's better than the richest black man, then you can get that white person to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think Franklin D. Roosevelt said that.
Yeah, I'm not sure who, but I think that may make sense. And so it's systematically been put out there, so now there's an internal fear in the world. You know, the people fear black people. They because of the narrative, the constantly negative narrative. Now, if the narrative of the truth was put out there, then people would actually be afraid of white people, because white people are the only people who have gone to everybody else's land and killed them and taken their shit and captured them. That only happens with white folks. Now, in some other countries have, you know, fought against each other and taken their prisoners, but to go from continent to continent and take people and their resources and claim them as yours, only white folks have done that since the beginning of time.
And call them savages.
Right, and because by calling others savages, then you dehumanize them. So you make the other innocent white folk who don't know what's going on, who follows the leader, go, oh, you must be right. well, they're savages and they're heathens and they're barbarians. We must save them, you know.